Most experiments aren't going to win, but you're going to gain really valuable insights or customer insights that can likely be used across different channels and different teams. So something we learned on the website, probably maybe an angle, how we're framing things, is probably going to be valuable on the paid side as well, or other marketing efforts. Sharing those allows those folks as well to see the value in what we're doing. The most efficient way that I've seen these programs be run is to have the core champion, like the experimentation champion, and that could be a team as well, and they work across functions.
The other point that I want to emphasize is that you're not just building a single experiment, right? Or a single test, or even working on a single landing page or channel. What you're hopefully trying to do within a larger organization is build the model and the culture of experimentation that lives and spans the organization and actually changes the way that they function. What that practically means is that there's lots of maturity models out there for this, but the idea of starting small, but making sure you scale that across the organization, you collaborate with other BUs, other cross-functional groups, and then over time you embed that capability within the organization and make it a strategic asset and way that you go about validating new ideas is really, really important. The counterexample that we've seen is a client that we've been working for 10 years, where they actually built successfully that program. We helped them go through the POC and actually build that experimentation in the organization. But then the people who were doing it left, and there were other priorities. The IT teams kind of took over, and it became more of a IT support process and development process as opposed to experimentation. And now they're in the process of trying to start that again. In an ideal world, had that culture of experimentation been embedded within the organization and had leadership been brought on board, that wouldn't have fallen off when some of those team members left. That would have been part of the organization, and they wouldn't have had to rebuild it from scratch, and maybe they'd be further along in terms of where they needed to be.
That's a really great call out. Like, the fragility of some of these programs that we've both seen is surprising. One stakeholder, one champion who really has the correct mindset leaves an organization, and that whole system is lost and goes with them. I do want to take a few moments to talk about what is a culture of experimentation. What we're trying to do, a component of it is kind of building redundancy a bit, just so this doesn't happen. Because with the example that you just shared, had built a successful program. This individual had left. Years passed with no experimentation, and it isn't a proactive kind of forward-thinking vision that is driving this need to get back to the experiment. It's a reaction to low performance. If you're not being proactive and you're being reactive, you're on a back foot. Really didn't talk about the importance of disseminating, getting visibility into the program, and it's exactly that. Sending out a monthly newsletter as an example of internally of experiments that have been run, results, etc. It's not a guarantee, but it at least is one piece of this push towards getting the organization aligned into the importance of what you're doing with the experimentation, and maybe it'll catch on. That's really the goal. Let me just take a step back into the culture aspect and how to ensure that for an enterprise who historically has not had this sort of way of doing things, how to make that shift. Again, one, early results, it's the easiest. It's the easiest. Show revenue impact, monetary impact. And then moving forward is the insights from the experiments. So most experiments aren't going to win, but you're going to gain really valuable insights or customer insights that can likely be used across different channels and different teams. So something we learn on the website, probably an angle, how we're framing things, is probably going to be valuable on the paid side as well, or other marketing efforts. So sharing those allows those folks as well to see the value in what we're doing. I would say the most efficient way that I've seen these programs be run is to have the core champion, like the experimentation champion. And that could be a team as well, and they work across functions. But the risk there is if certain folks leave, the whole thing gets lost. Just to summarize, like, I don't have the answer for how to make that not happen, but I know to reduce the risk is really just to be as open and share what you're doing, the results you're seeing, the value that these experiments are providing, either through pipeline revenue, customer insights as well, are extremely valuable. And do that on a recurring basis and get everyone's eyes, newsletter, internal playbooks, customer insight decks, things of that nature. And that will hopefully garner the ongoing visibility and support so that when certain individuals do leave an organization, everyone else understands the importance of keeping this sort of function alive.
Yeah, I think we could probably break down some of the plays that we've seen and the things that are effective by maturity stage. So when you're getting started, it probably makes sense to identify certainly a scope, like we've talked about, whether it's landing pages, forms, something that threads the needle between likely to show positive impact, but also not ruffle too many feathers. But also like identify a team that is agile and empowered to be able to take those risks and make those changes. So that team needs to have clear scope and be empowered to take those risks, but they also need to be somewhat cross-functional. You need the person who can strategize about the test that they want to do. You need someone with the analytics background to be able to look at the data and identify what customers are doing or not doing and visitors are doing on the site. You need the technical skills to be able to actually build and QA the test, and obviously you need to monitor and make a decision on the effectiveness of it. So that cross-functional agile team that can actually execute in a self-contained way and can take the risks is I think, an important component of it. And that's often hard to do if you have those team members reporting into different BUs and you have to go ask all the stakeholders and the managers if you can borrow their time to do it. So if you can identify that team, great, get them started on that thing that's going to have quick impact, low-hanging fruit impact. That's kind of that stage one maturity thing. What you're talking about after that is how then you take let's assume that they had, positive results and they're showing impact on KPIs. How do you take and distribute and socialize that? I think the newsletters, the publishing it, identifying other champions and other BUs are great. But over time, as you sort of progress around that maturity curve, one of the things that we've seen be effective is a center of excellence, right? Building those internal playbooks that span the organization, and the governance models that can go across the org. So it doesn't just live with that team, that small team. It now starts to become this separate entity that governs how experimentation and optimization work across the organization. And so if you can get there, and I think that was probably one of the missing things, it becomes more of the DNA and the culture of the organization as opposed to being siloed, creating yet another silo in the organization, which obviously can disappear when those people leave.
I think we're on the same page with this, but just to bring clarity, there's always been two philosophies for this culture of experimentation. One is the center of excellence, which is how I see it defined is kind of its own. You have marketing, you have product, you have experimentation. And that experimentation is a cross-functional piece, very small, very agile, and they're able to work across whoever, and they have the buy-in and the say from top executives to be able to get what they need to get done. And again, we're talking further down the line as the maturity increases. And the other one, I don't even know the label, but it's more of kind of grassroots, like each particular business unit or function is enabled to build and launch their own experiments. And this sounds great as it's defined, kind of crowdsourcing things. We often see issues with just ownership and conflicts, if you will. Like if everyone's building their own experiments independently, it just creates this complex system where no one really knows what's going on. Technically speaking, there could be code conflicts between some of these different experiments that are running. I have seen organizations do that just fine. But if we look at some of the top names that we know are very experiment driven, I'm not going to name drop anyone, but they all kind of work from this center of excellence model, which is a core experimentation function that then works full funnel and does what they need to do independently.
Maybe it's worth talking about some of the classic pitfalls and traps that enterprise organizations, let's say I'm a marketing manager, director at a larger enterprise organization, and I want to start doing more experimentation and optimization, maybe of the website, maybe other places. There's some classic pitfalls that we've seen, time and time again. And let me give you one and see how you respond to it. Obviously, you need data. You need analytics data, maybe qualitative data, to understand what visitors are doing on the website, how the customer journey is playing out, where the opportunities are to optimize. I've never been in an environment where the data is perfect, right? It's almost impossible for that data to be perfect, especially in this era of GDPR and CCPA and privacy regulations, and the ability to track is constrained. And so you can often run into a mindset that, well, we got to spend a year cleaning up the data and making sure the tracking is right before we can even get going on this. And I mean, what's your reaction to that? Like, how do you get past that mindset?
Yeah, and that's just the culture of an enterprise company where you want everything to be perfect. And that's where these smaller, more scrappy companies have the advantage because they just do it. They ship 80% of it, get it out the door. And especially in this day and age, speed is key. And if you take too long over analyzing things, just see quite often with especially early days, a lot of worrying about minute details that actually don't really matter. Being able and comfortable with things not being perfect and instead valuing getting things out the door and being able to validate ideas. As long as there is some trust with a current system or the current analytics system, let's start doing things. And concurrently, sure, we can go through and as we move forward, see where improvements can be made. It's difficult for them to move past that and get more of the scrappy, get things out the door mindset. Yeah, especially in the early days, like that's what it takes to kickstart these things. Otherwise, it's just going to be stuck under the same layers of bureaucracy that the rest of your organization might be under.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to our two drivers, right? Taking managed risk and speed. And if you spend too long overanalyzing and you spend too long getting the data right, the trade-off is you lose on velocity and you're not able to actually ship tests. So don't make the perfect the enemy of the good enough, right? Get it out the door. The other thing is the challenge of how you actually run an experiment and how you actually approve it, right? The initial questions of, great, we want to make this change, we want to test this thing, but how do we actually get approval on it? I mean, what are your thoughts on like that challenge? Because you don't want to be in a position where you're testing and your experimentation team has to go to 15 different stakeholders to get approval. You want that process to be relatively streamlined and quick so they can iterate through their roadmap.
I'm not the best at this just because my background has always been scrappy experimentation focused. But I would say it's just important to garner that initial buy-in from an executive so that you're able to get done what needs to happen. So you're not stuck with these layers of approval. Communicate it early, get the people that need to be in the know on the same page, aligned with this mindset and willing to kind of take risks and get some things out the door.
So I guess to wrap this up, I mean, if you're an enterprise and you're part of the go-to-market team and you want to be doing more experimentation, you want to start building that culture, but you don't have it now, what are your top 3 things that they should be keeping in mind and taking away from this to actually get the ball moving on a culture of experimentation?
First, be honest with yourself. And I'm saying this coming from experience working both in-house as well as from the consulting agency side. Like, see what resources you have available. Do you have all the components that are required to even get MVPs shipped out with experimentation? So an analyst, front-end dev that you have general ownership over, or really any developer, data engineer, whatever experiment type you're running. And if not, then for the, I guess, implementation and technical aspect, look outside the org. Look for a partner to help enable you to do those things. Quite often it is a bit challenging to get it done with internal resources, pulling a developer off a certain project to help out with the experimentation. The context switching doesn't always work. So start there. Next, don't think too far ahead. As you start getting moving, a lot of changes and things are going to just happen naturally. So focus on really in kind of a microcosm environment, building this culture of experimentation just for whatever small project or task you're focused on of the lead form experience, the landing page experience. From there, you're going to learn a lot in terms of implementation, how you're reporting, how you're program managing these sorts of things that can then be scaled out. Don't think too far ahead. Yes, we know the end goal vision, but take it piece by piece, get those quick wins, have the right team and resources available, share progress early and often just to garner that continued buy-in, and don't overthink things. Start validating ideas, get the process moving, and it's all going to be a lot more simple than you might think when you look at the totality of kind of the initiative or the path that you're going down.
I'd add on the leadership side, in the enterprise, there's challenges as well as opportunities. It's tempting but risky and probably not a great idea to create a sort of overly complex bureaucratic governance framework for this. You want this team ideally to be able to take risks on your behalf, to be able to get to those wins, and then for you to be able to propagate that inside the organization. So what's important there is to create a governance framework that empowers that team to take those risks, to be agile and decoupled from the slower moving parts of the organization and not be constrained. So that's the challenge from a leadership perspective, is how you build that governance framework with tight feedback loops so they're accountable, but they're also empowered, and lightweight approval workflows. And if you can get there and you can start getting those wins and building that momentum, then it really can become, a real driver of growth in the organization.
That completely makes sense. Good time for a call out. So we have compiled a free playbook of some of these patterns and experiment wins that we've run across a wide variety of our different customers. So if you're early on in your process, definitely recommend you check that out just to see how repeatable some of these are, and maybe we'll give you some ideas for kind of initial experiments. Again, just to get the ball rolling before layering on too much complexity. Check that out. I believe that's on our reform.app website. This is not a rare issue. It's very common. Lots of folks still hitting this issue. I'm surprised, but we're here to help out. So any questions or anything like that, we're both always open to lending a helping hand.
Sounds great. And we'll leave it there. Till next week.